Okay, welcome to the Petrosys webinar this afternoon. Today I'll be talking about the new Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys. We've got a few PowerPoint slides and a live demo of the software. I'm expecting the webinar to last about 20 minutes, so it should be no longer than 20 minutes. My name's Nathan, and I'm the VP for Petrosys in Europe, Russia and Africa, and we're based in the UK. So when you join the webinar today, your microphone was automatically muted so we don't get feedback and noises during the presentation. There will be time at the end to ask questions, or you can type them into the questions and we will answer them directly to you after the webinar. So final thing before I get started is to note that this webinar is being recorded. So at some stage in the next few days, the video of this webinar will be on our Petrosys webpage, so you'll be able to look at it again or share it with some of your colleagues. Okay, so we'll look at what we're going to talk about. First of all, we'll talk a little bit about the partnership between Petrosys and Schlumberger. We'll spend most of the webinar looking at a demonstration of the software. We'll then talk a little bit about the differences between the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys and the standard desktop Petrosys software that some of you may be familiar with, and then we'll finally we'll look at some of the benefits of what the software does. So to start with, we'll look at the partnership between Schlumberger and Petrosys. Why did Schlumberger come to Petrosys to help them? Well, Petrosys, as most of you may be aware, is a leading provider of mapping systems to the E&P industry. So we have a dedicated, experienced team of programmers and support people, and we've been providing mapping software to the E&P business for more than 30 years, and we have over 300 clients around the globe using that technology. So from the Schlumberger point of view, their clients had requested some additional features to be added to Petrel Mapping, and we have a list of some of the sorts of things that their customers had asked them to do. And as we go through the presentation, we'll show you some of that functionality which we've added into the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys. And I suppose the final question people have about the partnership usually is how can you buy this new module? This is a module which will be sold by Schlumberger. It's on the Schlumberger price list. But if you want to talk to Petrosys, we can provide contact information through to the Schlumberger sales teams. Okay, so that's enough PowerPoints for the time being. We'll just drop into Petrel. Okay, so here we have Petrel 2016 running my machine. The mapping module will be available in 2016.1, and it will also be made available for 2015.3 and above. So you'll be able to have it for those versions as well when it's released for 2016. I'm going to show you how the module works. For those of you that are familiar with Petrosys, you'll recognize some of the functions we're showing. As you see here, we have a map that we've already created. We'll come back to look at that one a little later on. To start with, we'll go and create a new map inside of Petrel. So we'll go to the Home button, and we'll go to create a new window. So when we create a new window, you'll notice that there's a new option, and that new option is the Petrosys map window. If we click on the Petrosys map window, that one opens up, and it opens up with a dynamic extent. And what that means is, as I start to create or put things onto this map by selecting them in my Petrel tabs over here, and I can switch on, maybe I'll switch on some seismic, I'll switch on some 2D seismic in this case, the map will automatically jump to the full extent of my data. So if I was to choose another layer, I go to some cultural data, and I have some license blocks in here for the North Sea. You'll see that my map then jumps to the extent, and as I switch things on and off in my Petrel window, they then appear and disappear from my display tab from the Petrosys map. So it's very closely linked to the inside the Petrel environment. You can have as many of these Petrosys map windows open as you like, and each one is then referenced in the Windows tab over here. So you can see multiple windows over here, multiple windows that we have open. And all of the windows are then closely linked in the Petrel environment, so we can do things like cursor tracking. So you can have cursor tracking between your Petrel map and your Petrel windows and your Petrosys map. We'll have a look a bit more about the company standards and the templates a little bit later on. But first of all, we'll go back to the map that we looked at the start that we'd already created, which is a map with all the information on it. So the important things to note and what we bring to the inside with our map inside is to enhance the quality and the levels of controls that you have displaying your data types from inside of Petrel to your Petrosys map. So if we see over here, there's a list of types of information that we have in our display list. And as you see, for those familiar with Petrosys, we have our display list and we have the concept of grouping these things in our groups as we have in the desktop version. We'll start with just looking at some of the items that we can display. So we'll look at the wells to start with. So for those of you familiar with Petrosys, this is a standard Petrosys wells display. So we display the symbols, top or bottom, and we then have the full control. Now, all of the well symbology inside of this Petrosys map uses the same symbology inside of Petrel, and we then have the abilities to do annotations. So we can annotate things, we can display the well paths. So the full control of the Petrosys map is inside of Petrel. So the color is controlled, the styles of all the lines, the thickness. So all the things that Petrosys map users are familiar with are available inside of Petrel. Let's look at the seismic. So in this particular case, we've got some 2D seismic. We also can display 3D seismic, obviously. But inside of here, we can now start to change the displays that Petrosys map users are used to. So we go into the edit here, and we have the control over the style of the line. So the posting, the shot point symbology, the line symbology, the full quality control that you have inside of Petrosys to be able to do your seismic line display. Okay, and the third thing I want to look at is just the grid. So we've got a colorful grid here. One of the things that we bring then is the enhanced display of color fill surfaces and contours, particularly up to faults. So in this particular case, we have a grid that's coming from our model tab. We can use all of the gradients from inside of our Petrosys system. So all the gradients that we had before, and we can have multiple gradients. So if you have multiple grids to display in a map, you can have multiple gradients just like you can inside of Petrosys. And also things like the translucency, you can make things translucent. So you can add quality and show more information on a particular map by changing these styles and technologies. Also from the contour side, we can then create contours. So if you wanted to create another contour level in here, for example, at minus 1987, make it pink dashed. You can add that, and it will then just go away and regenerate those contours on the fly as we create our map. And as we then zoom in, we'll just zoom into this part of the map. You can see the extra contour that I created. The pink contour is in there, as well as having the red contour at a different level. So these contours are high quality, rendered using the Petrosys technology. We'll just have a look at another couple of things in here for a second while I'm at this area. We're going to look at some of the overpost control that we have using Petrosys. I'm going to select this well, this A16 well. And as you see here, the way the well label is drawn, it draws over the top of the deviation survey. I can use the overpost correction to be able to move. So I can move labels, I can hide labels. So anywhere with this text, whether it's seismic lines, Anywhere where we've annotated anything, whether it's well tops or other things we've posted, we can move them and change them. So whether it's just changing the location, changing the size, the angle, the colors, just individually. And what that gives us is, as a geoscientist, I can make my map give the impression of what I'm trying to pass on to my colleagues or my peers or my partners. We'll say OK. As I said, we can do contour editing on. We can do overpost correction on lots of things. So I could also, if I wanted to, overpost correct on contours. So I want to move a contour label, or I might want to add a contour label, or I can do things like, if I've got an area where I want to add some contour labels where there are no contour labels, I can do this sort of technology where I'll draw a line and it automatically puts in contour labels where I want them to be along my contours. So this enables us to make the map more visually appealing and more informative to people who are actually looking at the map. So far we've looked at changing the styles and displaying things onto a map. We're also going to just have a look at editing the actual data itself. So we have our spatial editor inside of the map, inside of Petrel. Just zoom out a second. We're going to look at some contours. So I'm actually going to edit some of these contours. So we'll press the edit button and we go to the spatial editor over here. Now I'm going to zoom into this area and do some editing. So in this particular area here, I have some contours which I might want to change. So in this particular case, I'm going to select this contour, and using the edit tools that people are familiar with Petrosys will be familiar with, we can do things like smoothing contours, for example. So I'll take this contour and we'll actually smooth it. Or I'll take another contour and smooth that. Or I'll do things like bend the contour. So I might choose some contours in here. And I'll actually take them to bend them. So I can actually move contours, or simple things like delete things. So I can actually take a contour or a series of contours here and just erase some. So I can use the eraser to get rid of some information. So obviously, once I've edited these contours, I can then save them back. So I can save them back to a contour file which will sit inside of my Petrel project. Or if I come out of the editor without, I can then say, no, I don't want to save. I can either save them into a contour file or I can discard them. In this particular case, I'm going to discard them. So now I'm back at the full Petrosys map. I go to the Petrosys tab. As you see up here, all of the options are in a format that Petrel users will be familiar with. So we've put all of our icons up into this ribbon tab, and we can do, as we saw, switching data on and off. We can do other things, like we can add title blocks or legends or location maps, as we've seen here. So all these things are added. So once we've added the title block, we may want to then add information into it, text into it, to actually print on our map. So as we start to see this, we start to build what we call our templates, and then we can look at our templates up here, and this template controls things like the area of interest, how the map looks, the annotation, all the intricacies of how the annotation may be added to that particular map. Now what we can do is, once we've created a company standard, we can save this as a company standard, and then from our templates over here, we can actually load up, when we load the project, you'll load all of these company standards. So if I have a map, for example, so this one, no, not one, this one here, the one I created before, which was the seismic, I might say I've drawn some data onto my map, I now want to assign a company standard to it. I can then select a company standard. So all of my maps will have the same look and feel, company logos, title blocks, all that sort of stuff. All the things that people like using Petrosys maps for, to give them that corporate standard of their mapping experience. Okay, one final thing I want to show you, if I just go back to this map window here, is the electronic output from the module. So once I'm in my Petrosys map and I have it displayed the way I want it to be, I can then go to my output and I can either go directly to the printer or I can export to a number of graphic formats. So graphic formats, and this one I'm going to choose is PDF. So I'll click on PDF here and we'll say OK. It's going to create me a high quality PDF. And within the PDF, this is just using Adobe Reader, I can see that it's also layered. So in this particular case, I have all of my layers in that particular map, which I then have stored and I can use. So I might switch off the horizon or switch off the well so I can actually see individual things. And what I can show you as well in here, I've got another map window that's displayed, not that one, which has a whole series of different grids from this particular project, different horizons. So if I make a PDF of that, say OK, it's just going to overwrite the one I had before, that's OK. So look, where is it? This one here. So this is my PDF, and I now have all of my layers, so I can switch on or off all of the layers. So you can use this to share. Obviously, we've just got grids switched on here, but we could have every single thing that we wanted to share, and then we could use the PDF as a method of sharing that between partners or colleagues or regulatory authorities or whatever. Okay, so that's the demonstration finished. I'm just going to drop back into PowerPoint to finish off the webinar. There's a couple of slides now which we talk about what the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys doesn't have. So for those of you who are familiar with the standard Petrosys, there's a couple of things that the module inside of Petrel doesn't have. So the first thing is the access to surface modeling, so the ability to have the high quality gridding algorithm, so the gridding up to faults, gridding sparse data sets, the advantages of using Petrosys gridding that people are familiar with, things like the volumetrics, the grid merging, all the things in the surface modeling part of Petrosys are not included in the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys. And the second main difference is the connectivity. The map we've shown you only has the ability to display data from inside of Petrel, so we have no third-party connectivity. So connecting to technical systems such as Landmark or Paradigm or Doug, it doesn't do that. Connecting to GIS systems like Esri formats or other things like Excel spreadsheets or PowerPoint that standard Petrosys map will connect to, this doesn't connect to that. And the next couple of slides shows you some comparison of the actual functionality. So here on the right hand side we have the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys and then the standard desktop. So as you see in here, a lot of the display types are in there. As you start to move down through and move into the area with the gridding and contouring and the surface modeling parts of Petrosys, the surface modeling and the connectivity stuff are all in here, but none of them exist in the mapping module by Petrosys. So just an idea to show you that it's not a straight swap of putting all of our functionality in there. There are some other things which we don't have, and it's particularly the surface modeling and the connectivity. So one final slide just to finish off, just to look at what the benefits of the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys have. So if you're a user, you'll benefit because it means it's easier for you to communicate the quality of your subsurface outcomes, so to share your projects with other people more clearly in maps that are of higher quality. You'll spend less time creating higher quality output, and that in itself leads to more clearly sharing the technical context of what you're doing. You also don't have to outsource your quality mapping to another person, team, or switch to another product. You can do all of your quality map making inside of Petrel. The companies will benefit because you'll see a consistent corporate standard for your mapping. You'll be able to introduce the ideas of the standardized map sheets title blocks, legends, this sort of thing. And it's a more efficient use of employees' time. Users will be spending less time creating higher quality output. And partners and regulators will benefit because they'll be the recipients of these high quality outputs, and it makes it more easy to more effectively share the data and knowledge between people. Okay, that's the end of the webinar. I think I've just about kept it to 20 minutes. If you have any questions, we'll open up the mics in a second for people to ask questions. If you've asked questions in the chat log, we will come to those and answer them. If we don't answer them during the webinar, we'll answer them afterwards. Also, if you keep an eye out on our webpage, petrosys.com.au, you'll see both this webinar recorded, loaded up in the next few days, and also there's a whole stream of other webinars about other functionality of Petrosys products. So in the meantime, I'll just open up the microphones if anyone has any questions. But for those of you who don't have questions or want to leave, thank you very much for attending. Hope you find it interesting.